Okay, so who's the procrastinator? It's Dr. Manny. Welcome to Asylum. The topic is the procrastinator. The procrastinator is this character that I imagine that we all turn into from time to time, and we don't want to be the procrastinator. We want to be the producer. That's the ideal character, but the procrastinator role has so many rewards to it. Somewhere along the way in life, it got good to us, and we default into that position. Now, what I want to look at is sort of how do we end up in the procrastinator position? What does the procrastinator position look like? And I don't mean in the blaming, um, hey Todd, hey Dr. Don. So I want to look at the procrastinator position not as in a blaming way, uh, but in a way to say, how do we recognize it in someone else? How do we recognize it in ourselves? Once we recognize it, what do we do to either lift ourselves out of the position, or how do we, if we're managing a group of people or working with someone we're mentoring, or even have a good friend that we see slipping into the procrastinator position, how do we help them out of it? Now, what's extra important is that when you're stuck in certain mental states, when you've taken on certain roles, part of the um, part of the power of the role is that it saps your energy with it. When you're in a procrastinator position, it's not just that you're there and you can hop out easily to another position. If that were the case, then you wouldn't be stuck in a procrastinator state. Um, a procrastinator position has so much less sense of agency, so much less power than a producer position, a producer role, that when we're in the producer role, we forget how stuck we felt when we were in the procrastinator role. And we're like, just hop up out of it, pull yourself up by your bootstraps or whatever. Just do it, just do it. That's the one, as when you're stuck in a procrastinator role, a producer will say to you a lot. But what I want to do is let's recognize the procrastinator from within. And then once you recognize it from within and you develop a depth of empathy for it, then for one, you won't guilt and kick yourself when you fall into a procrastinator position. You'll do the steps involved in climbing out of it. And I say climbing out of it as a metaphor of choice as opposed to floating out of it, because your ass gonna have to work. Yeah, you're gonna have you get out of the procrastinator position by taking small steps, and by noticing yourself taking those small steps, and by not judging yourself for each of those small steps. What ends up happening is we observe ourselves. So when you're observing yourself, you can split into two selves. And uh, this sounds a little abstract, but if you're kicking yourself around all day, you're alienating yourself from yourself. You're creating an enemy voice within yourself. And so you have half as much energy to do whatever it was you were going to do. You become your own enemy. So that's where half of your energy goes, by the way. This is why you get stuck in a procrastinator position, because you're telling yourself a story in which you're imagining another character kicking you with every step you take. Now, if you take small steps, then observe yourself taking those small steps, and you talk to yourself in a guiding, productive way, then you're not fighting with yourself. You have twice as much energy. You've created a consensus within yourself. No internal conflict is what they like to call it. I think something's flying overhead, so I'm gonna give that a minute so y'all won't get hella helicopter sounds versus what I'm saying. So, so that's where you're applying your energy, okay? In this divided self, this alienated self, you're going to feel extra vulnerable. Because here's the thing: when we have these voices, these audio tapes running in our heads, it's so much easier to just find someone and project that voice onto them, that role onto them. So you'll surround yourself with people who are inclined to do the things that lead to you procrastinating. That is, people who reward your procrastination. As long as you choose the procrastinator identity, you'll withdraw from people who are moving, who are creating, who are producing themselves, because those people will hold you accountable along the way. And that would be a good thing. That would be a nurturing thing if it weren't for the fact that no matter what those people are saying, you're projecting that internal set of demons, that chip on your shoulder. Everything they're saying, you're hearing through your filter of self. And remember, once you've divided yourself, you're half energy of wanting to do the job, and the other half of the energy kicking your own ass in a circle. Yeah. So that other half of the energy, you don't say to yourself, "Oh, I'm walking around all day not doing anything." You might, but that's a different presentation. What you'll find often, and what you will feel most disempowered by, is when you cut your energy in half and project half your energy onto another person who you invite into your life in a relationship where the role they play against your procrastinator is a persecutor role. This is someone who comes around and kicks your ass to validate the fact that you're not just doing this in your head. There's someone out here doing it. If it weren't for him, I would have done it already, but he keeps interrupting me. Why does he keep interrupting you? Well, he come checking on me because he doesn't believe I'm going to get it done. Well, why is that? Because I'm not getting it done. And why aren't you getting it done? Because I don't have the energy. I can't focus. Hey, Claire, thanks for joining. So you're inclined to project that half of your power that you don't feel you have anymore onto someone else. But when you are alone in the quiet, what you'll realize is, even if that person wasn't there, if they weren't around to do it, you would continue to project that set of audios onto yourself. It's a set of patterns, it's a set of scripts that are running in your mind that you need an attribution for because you've taken on the procrastinator role. Okay? Now, that I think explains how to recognize yourself in the procrastinator role. So, what are the things that lead to someone being in the procrastinator role? And hopefully, because I'm a nonlinear thinker, in the process of explaining those things, I'll probably elaborate on more recognition cues, more elements and patterns you can notice within your cycle to let you know that you're not in the productive part of the cycle. So, what are the circumstances that are going to lead to procrastination? What rewards procrastination? So, if you have situations where someone comes along and they tell you to do something, and and remember, you attract the kind of people to play the roles that inside your mind you need a crutch outside of your head to play. Okay? So when I'm talking about all these other people, keep in mind that if they weren't around, you'll do it to yourself anyway. And then you'll go looking for someone who's going to validate that tape. So if you surround yourself with people who are impatient, people who get angry and either tell you, never mind, I'll do it anyway, then it becomes rewarding not to do it, not to do whatever it is you set out to do. Because then you could say to yourself, well, I was going to do it, and they came up and they did it. You're getting the payoff in that particular script, in that role, by the fact that you eventually develop a tolerance for their anger, which generalizes to other aspects of the relationship. But specifically, you'll develop a set of things that you don't want to do, don't care how they're done, don't feel secure doing. And we can look into that aspect in a different context than later. But you basically set out to do the task, knowing that doing it with that person, they're going to end up doing it. They're going to complain the whole time, but you develop an ability to tune that out. Hey, Christine, thanks for joining. So That's one role you'll have someone play. Now, if you surround yourself with impatient people, and these are different ways in which people can be a little bit microtoxic. This isn't full flagrant toxic, but this is other people who are also frustrated and haven't started living their story outside of the constraints of their role. So, because people who are living in producer roles, they tend to be productive, and as such, they tend to use accountability systems. They tend to respond to feedback. They deliver feedback effectively. So, again, these are I don't want to use the word toxic, but these are experiences that will be a bit of a microaggression. If you are in situations in which your accomplishments are not rewarded, if you surround yourself by people who ignore the accomplishments and strictly see the negative, and as such tend to complain, then you're not going to be inclined to achieve because there's no achievement rewards. There's no incentive to achieve. If you're surrounded by people who are extremely pessimistic, who are thanks, Christy. Yeah, you missed a little bit, but you could go back and catch that part in a bit. Yeah, and plus I talk in circles anyway, as you know, so it'll come back up. um, so different situations. If you are surrounded by people who believe in a negative human nature that needs guilt, shame, and punishment to be motivated, then there's a good chance that the task was initiated with a bit of resentment. You're like, look what I have to do. And so you do it begrudgingly. This is contrary to a producer who is creating, and by creating, I mean who is writing in a conscious, present way, who is speaking, singing, moving some stuff from one room to another, someone who is producing change out in the real world. So a producer slash a creator would be, now, I'm pretty sure I entirely lost the train of thought in that one. I do that. It happens. But the point is that you'll surround yourself with people who are either doing stuff or who are enabling you to remain in that position because part of their identity is woven in it. Okay? There are different presentations. Now, I remember now. It came back. See? So if you are surrounded by people who have a worldview that we are driven by guilt and shame and fear, people who themselves spend most of their time in a bit of a state of worry, then they're going to displace that negativity onto you, and you'll have a team of people who are worried, who are constantly behind a deadline, who present ideas to you. Hey, Chris. Hey, JC. Thanks for joining. You'll end up surrounded by people who bring things before it's too late to do anything about it. People who immediately, when something presents, see it as a threat instead of an opportunity, and as such are immediately always putting out fires. Some people are people who live in the hero role, and as such won't notice things until it needs their Superman intervention. Now, these are people you could have conditioned, if you have that kind of leverage, into noticing earlier parts in the process, because people who are enabling your procrastinator role will either be applying punishment and distraction. So that's in the abstract. They're around, and they're applying things that are keeping you at a state of arousal that won't allow you to enter into peak performance. So it's a state that has a bit of fight, flight, a bit of cortisol, so a bit of hypofrontality for the science geeks. They keep you in an amygdala type zone: fight, flight, freeze, faint. None of those are creative, productive, empathic, imaginative, I already said creative states. So they're microtoxic. So essentially, you're going back to the original model. When you decide to alienate part of yourself from yourself, when you create those voices in your mind, those tapes, you're going to project them onto people. That means that you're walking around attracting people who reward your procrastination with certain payoffs. Those payoffs are stories that you get to activate and look around and say, see, I told you so. There's a sense of resolution of cognitive dissonance that is intoxicatingly addictive. Okay? So we're addicted to these thought cycles, these stories. They pop up in our minds. And if we choose to believe them, the moment we put our faith in them, we experience the rush of the reward because we imagine them as reality. And we get stuck in them. We get stuck in the reward loops. And this is what you basically call being bound by ego. We're so caught up in the rewards and we're so triggered by the threats that we get conditioned to that role. After a while, the rewards you start to get where you don't really believe you're going to get those rewards anymore. You be like, nah, I'm going to do it. And they're not really going to reward me. This ain't that kind of party. This is the kind of place where the whole time I'm trying to do it, they're going to complain. They're going to criticize me. They're going to pull me back. They're going to doubt me. But they don't really believe I'm going to do it. So they don't even have the reward for me. They don't even have that on hand. You know, it's like betting with someone who you know don't have the money to pay you. Nah, man. So, again, this goes back to the concept of you attract who you need to be out there. So, as you integrate yourself, which is the process of eliminating that divide, that part where you take 50% of your energy and you use it to hold yourself back, to kick yourself, and to attract and surround yourself with people who are speaking in that language, that disempowering language that triggers you into an unresourceful state that you in turn use as an excuse for procrastinating. So hopefully I'm looping through that several times so that you can hear it from different perspectives. Hopefully that's more useful than redundant. If not, then I don't know, ask me questions. So essentially what you'll find is that the story that you choose to believe has these rewards in it. As you start to not believe that either you're going to be able to accomplish the thing to get the reward, you're not going to be able to hit that goal. As you start to get that sense, or you get the sense that the person who's promising the goal or the system, you know, this could be a relationship with God where you're like, you know, just God hasn't been delivering on his promises lately. If you start to get that feeling and then you start to tell yourself a story of, well, it's because I'm not deserving, I'm not worthy. Then you start to worry about what you're not worthy about. And that's where 50% of your energy goes instead of 100% all in, full faith-based focus, believing in yourself that you're going to accomplish it. Whatever it is that you decided you wanted to do. That's the producer role. So what I wanted to do, my intention with this recording was to create a clear enough canvas such that you can look around you and see, are you recruiting people into these roles? Are you creating these relationships? Are they around you? And notice that if these relationships are around you, they're a projection of these voices, these thoughts that you have, these limiting beliefs, these sets of constraints on your identity. And you can pretend to push and jump and create and think and innovate and be different than you were yesterday. But as long as you're continuing to cultivate these constraining relationships, these limiting relationships with people who are stuck in a fixed mindset as opposed to a growth mindset, as long as you continue to attract people who are choosing to remain asleep, then you'll continue to be a procrastinator. Because the role will continue to have the rewards. Change is uncomfortable. Change is awkward. And change is hard. And that's why most people will tell you in a heartbeat, this is the way I am. Or God made me this way. Nah, God made you flexible. You decided to stay on your ass. So it becomes a matter of, again, when you're in a role, it takes a lot of energy to get out of the role, to wake up to the fact that, to even remember that you took this role, you chose this identity, you chose this role for the rewards. And then you chose to believe that you were in that role. And you chose to imagine and fantasize about the promised rewards. And then at one point you chose to forget that you were in a role. You chose to forget that these amplified fears, these that are keeping you in line in that role, are part of a construct that you're projecting onto reality. Those fears are way out of proportion to the minor dangers that really exist in the world that you will attract when you choose to become a producer. When you choose to start making each decision with an intention of an outcome, a precise, measurable, communicable outcome. Thanks, Christine. God made you flexible. You decided to stay on your head. Yeah. 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 I meant that. So, the core concept is that when you recognize that you are in the procrastinator role, the first step is admitting the truth of the position and saying, oh yeah, I'm doing that right now. The second step is to immediately make a choice to step out of the role and be like, okay, I'm going to stop doing this. This is not working for me. I don't even believe in the rewards. And I'm at a stage now where those rewards don't even sound that rewarding to me. They're not pulling me. They're not energizing me. And actually, there ain't nothing they could do to me because they've been doing this stuff to me for X number of time and it ain't killed me yet. So I don't really have a good reason to be afraid. So the people around me who are prodding me into fear, they need that. That's part of their definition of reality. You're a crutch in their reality. You're enabling their disintegrity from reality. And both of y'all are in this dance. No one's going to want to stop dancing. When you decide to grow, they're going to flip out because they're going to come to you and they're going to do what they usually do to make you do what you do to validate their role. And when you don't do it, they're going to turn up the volume. And y'all going to procrastinate together in drama. Thanks, Yvonne. Yvonne said, ooh, that's powerful. Thank you. So the first step is to make a decision that you're not going to dance anymore. Be like, I'm sitting this one out. And that doesn't mean you're going to immediately jump into action, jump into inspiration. That's not what happens at first. When you decide to stop procrastinating, everything gets louder. Every distraction gets prettier. You know, if you're a drinker, every drink, promise, looks more delicious. If you're a partier, that's the night the club going to have all the discounts. Your favorite artist going to be coming to town. And all these different distractions are going to show up. So the first step for that, once you realize that you've made the decision, the clarity of the decision is what makes it intentional. Then you immediately take back your power from the distractors around you, the noise, the discouraging people, and you start to schedule the very things that would have been times of procrastination as rewards. And how do you do that? You do that by managing the time differently. If you know there's a concert coming to town in a month that you want to see, you make that concert the reward. And you say to yourself, you know what? I'm going to buy myself this ticket because I know I'm going to do the work that it takes for it. Okay. And then you get clear about it. It's intentional now. Okay, the work has to be done or I don't go to this concert. And I bought the ticket, so I'm going to blow this money out the window. And then you got to hand the ticket to someone you trust. Not someone who's going to hand it to you after you beg or after you seduce them into it. Because that's one of the things we do when we're trying to lose weight. We'll put stuff in the fridge and be like, "Well, I'm not gonna eat this," and you know that that's the very thing you told your husband or boyfriend is your favorite, so he gonna bring it. We do that. So when you're setting up your reward system, you have to have made a clear decision, demonstrated the resolve, and articulated clearly to the support system that this is how you want them to behave if they truly are supporting you in the outcome. And that's hard to do because you'd be like, well, you know how I get when I'm hungry. Or if you're in this dyad where one person has decided to stop drinking, the other person needs to realize that they're going to escalate and they're going to be toxic and they're going to do those things. And there needs to be some sort of communication. Be like, look, this is the point at which we're enacting the plan that you told me to hold you accountable for. Okay. So you create the reward, and then you, right in front of the reward, you set up the set of measurable action steps that need to be accomplished in order for you to give yourself that reward. Concert's coming tonight, Friday. Okay, so that means I'm gonna put in 8 hours, 8 hours, 8 hours, 8 hours. If I don't put in these 32 hours, no concert for me. But you already bought the ticket. That would make that punishment suck twice, wouldn't it? Get off your ass. Go put in the work. It really is that simple. But here's the thing. You're not going to have that kind of relationship with yourself if you split your energy in half and you kicking your ass the whole time you're doing the work. It's got to be 8 hours of work that you want to do, A, because you know you have your reward waiting on Friday riding on it, and B, you know that come Friday, you're not gonna bring your inner critic with you to that concert. You're not gonna be at that concert guilting yourself for going to the concert. And this is the concept of guilt-free reward. Now, the difference between a procrastination and a reward is that a procrastination is when you decide to reach your hand in the cookie jar before your workout, talking about I'll work this off later. How often does that work? So when we set up that dynamic, it's usually because, again, we have that inner voice criticizing us, not believing in us, in our ability to complete the task. If you don't believe you're going to do the 8 hours of work a day because you know you're going to be kicking yourself from the second you sit down to work all the way for 8 hours, you're going to be distracted and you're not going to be doing anything within that time to grow your ability to focus and create and delve more deeply into that time with yourself. If anytime you sit down alone, half of your energy goes into kicking your own ass in a circle, you're not going to be prone to wanting to sit down and do work. And we do that when we take on that role and we forget that we took on the role. We attracted the people around us to support that role. So again, you be sitting at the desk like, yeah, people keep interrupting me. That's because you've conditioned them to interrupt you. I know a bunch of people. I used to work in cubicles after my residency. I was working in software factories where you knew who not to walk up to because they'll flip the hell out. That guy doesn't get interrupted even by the so-called interrupter. So you condition people to treat you a certain way because they validate that role. You at some point decide, okay, I like to be interrupted about 3 times an hour. Yeah. The people that come around your desk, somehow or other, you're validating some element of their script. And so they come back to get their little toxin and distract you in the process. So become aware that all those elements, when they say you attract who you are, what they mean is that once you make that split and you choose to alienate half of yourself by not believing in yourself, by imagining that instead of intrinsically reaching in and creating something that's going to have value, having this natural human drive to cooperate and contribute. If you don't believe those exist, then you're going to split yourself in two in your mind, and you're going to use half of you to nudge, nag, kick, criticize, judge, label as lazy, you're going to use half your energy doing that. And so you won't be growing during the time that you're in those 8-hour states every day on your way to your concert. You'll be punishing yourself, and then you won't develop a habit of nurturing yourself, and you won't have a habit of rewarding yourself appropriately. Because the whole time you're preparing for this concert, you're kicking yourself with half your energy saying, I'm not going to make it there anyway. I'm not going to be able to do these 8 hours or whatever else you're telling yourself. You're working at half energy. It's not rewarding. You're not creative. You're not really productive. You're just busy. And you hate working because every time you sit down to do some damn work, it involves you whooping your own ass, either internally or with the people you've chosen and conditioned to do it. So there's no room for growth. There's no flexibility. There's no willingness to take risk. So that's basically a good way to think about self-esteem, is that your willingness to take a risk on yourself, to gamble on yourself, to bet that you're going to do what you said you're going to do. Your self-trust, your belief in your self-capacity, your belief in your worth as a person. So when you split yourself in half like that, you're always operating at half your potential, because the other half of your potential is going into kicking your own ass and predicting all these negative outcomes. And then what's going to end up happening is at the end of the week, you will have done those eight, you will have done your 32 hours of work, but you'll look at the work and you won't get the intrinsic reward or satisfaction from the work that leads you to a focused, passionate practice. You won't have something you're proud of. You won't have something you created. You'll have something you trudged through, half-minded, with a bit of resentment. So as you look at it, you're going to look back at the work and you won't even think about it. You won't get in the car, go to the concert and drink your other half of your mind that's going to be there with you, telling you about the crap work that you did this week anyway, drunk, silent, which is what a lot of people do. If they have that other half of them that's constantly beating them up, what they do is they shut that function down with either alcohol, drugs, retail therapy, shopping. They just go out and do these things that are so distracting and create so much noise that instead of being even fully present in that moment, which is guilt-free play, recuperative, rewarding play, instead of being there enjoying the relationships with the other people who are at whatever event you're rewarding yourself with, you're still projecting those guilt voices, those critic voices. So you're at this concert, you're like, yo, they're looking at me funny at this, what, they think I should be here? And then, so you're at this concert talking about work now, complaining about the people at work, surrounded by other complainers, because you attract people. The people that went to you with this concert with you know how you do at concerts. Okay. They know that you will do the reward and you will be the kind of person that the whole time we're all enjoying the reward, you're complaining about it. You have this latent passive aggressive anger that you're acting out. You know, possibly you buying out the bar to show that the job that you hate that doesn't pay enough is still paying you, you know, showing signals of reward, you know, overdoing it on payday, just various things that when we have this procrastinator role, this resentful energy, in the sense of being constrained within the walls of this work, instead of seeing the work as a place to unfold, create, contribute, and make an impact, when you have that aversive, toxic view of your relationship with the work, it leads you to be aversive to the work. It leads you to dread sitting down to start. Oh yeah, retail therapy will get you, Yvonne. So when you have this aversion to starting because you hate the work, when you have this aversion to starting because you know there's no reward waiting on the other side, or when you know that when it's time to get the reward, you're going to make yourself miserable and make everyone around you miserable, and y'all going to make each other miserable because, again, you chose people who like to hear you complain so that they can complain too. Because the second you start complaining, it gives them permission to complain. So now you have a table of people spending a Friday night, instead of getting to know each other and creating something or launching something, are sitting around complaining together. And so those are the ways in which to leave the procrastinator role would mean to leave those things which have become rewarding, the relationships in which all y'all do is complain. It would mean saying to that circle of friends, hey y'all, how about we challenge each other to stop complaining? How about we build something? How about we do a 30 day affirmation challenge where every day we do a new affirmation? Something. And then you're going to see who in that group is going to be like, okay, and who is going to tell you, I'm not doing that dumb mess. And that'll give you a pretty good idea of who in your circle is going to enable you, keep you, and enable you in the procrastinator role, and who is going to empower you and take the journey to the producer role with you. And that don't mean you got to turn your back on everybody, but it means that when it's time to get work done, you're going to need to keep in mind who to include within the circle of productivity and who will eventually, in the interest of self-sabotaging, sabotage the entire collective work. And here's the trick of it. You got to recognize when you're that person. Because remember, you're projecting all these roles from within yourself onto other people. These are roles that you perceive as present in your current universe. And it takes a decision, an explicit decision to walk away from that. The rewards, the threats, the fact that the people that you choose to leave behind are going to call you and talk about you forgot where you came from, talk about you think you're better than us, talk about you don't spend time with us anymore, talk about you should have 3 or 4 more drinks, we're doing another round of shots, let's go, why are you quitting, whatever. You know how it looks. I'm not in your world like that, but you know it, because you'll be like, yo, this gonna make it harder to work tomorrow. This gonna make me late again like I was last time I hung out with y'all cats. So you're going to see who is stuck in those ways. When you make a decision, a clear decision that the goal is to get here, and you define that here in a way that you have a clear vision of the steps. You have a clear vision of what it's going to take. You have a clear vision of the people you're going to need when you get there and the roles they're going to play. When you get the clarity on that, then every minute of your time, you'll know when you're actively sabotaging that by getting more deeply enmeshed in those situations. By being vulnerable to the opinions and going to people for advice who are invested in staying in that position and keeping you in the position where you are as the counter position, as the partner in that dance. People with critical feedback that ignore your progress. People that say damaging things and call it constructive criticism. Just different ways in which people need you in that position and will reward you at the same time as they injure you. They'll compliment you, and as you're in the midst of the compliment and your guard is down, they'll say something passive aggressive, insulting, and you'll be like, I keep coming around for these compliments because I know this person will compliment me, and I'm in a nervous place right now where I don't get many compliments from a lot of people. Yet you know that they're gonna jab you with the injury in the process, and then give you another compliment. They'll give you a compliment sandwich, is what they call it, where they say something fantastic to you and you're like, really? And so you start listening really good. Then they say some toxic mess, and then they'll say something else fantastic, and you walk away like, wow, she said some great shit to me. Except in the middle, that was a compliment sandwich, with 2 slices of compliment, but there was something in the middle there that, every time you go to it, you're going to get that negative. So those are the rewarding relationships that when you make a decision, you're going to have to unhook from. Because as long as you're in that story, as long as you've adopted the procrastinator role, you're going to be subjected to the threats, the amplified fears. You're going to respond like that role. You're going to chase the carrots that are embedded in that role. You're going to imagine yourself with all the accolades associated with a position until you decide that you're not going to play that position anymore, and you choose and commit to another position. So those are the ideas I have right now accessible around the procrastinator. Hopefully that was helpful. As you guys know, I do one-to-one coaching to help you get the stuff done that you actually really, really want to do. Whether that involves helping you figure out how you're keeping yourself from accomplishing your goals, understanding your limiting beliefs, understanding your fears and how to look at them differently to overcome that, getting your energy back, getting motivated, figuring out the dynamics in relationships that are draining you and how to have those difficult conversations. So I work through all that with you. So send me a private message if those are some things that you'd like to explore. Dr. Manny, I'm out.